Those who are fighting today for freedom, for justice, for transparency, for government accountability. Those who are fighting for the dignity of the individual, for self-respect, and against thuggish, official, corrupt governments who coerce and extort. Those people, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you too, are on the right side of history. Tens of thousands of people went out into the street to face the guns and the brutality of the security forces.
Mine is a book about the whole global situation, mostly about the bribe takers, to a lesser extent the bribe payers.
You have the World Bank, you have the United Nations, you have the International Monetary Fund, you have the OECD. All of them have today a stated priority of fighting corruption. 20 years ago, they wouldn't even acknowledge the issue. I think this sets a base for tremendous progress, but we still have a long way to go before we can claim victory. Hello, I'm Frank Vogl. Rarely before has our American economy been so challenged, have Americans been so concerned about prospects, and investors been so nervous. It's not just the scale of unemployment and housing foreclosures, it's also the dark clouds hovering over much of the world's economy, and crucially, worries that our political system is captured by special interests and unable to operate constructively. For 40 years, I've been involved in global economic policy and developments, as a journalist, as a World Bank official, and as an advisor to leaders of financial institutions. I've been in the trenches of global economics and finance. And then at the same time, I've spent a great deal of time involved in many voluntary initiatives to reduce corruption across the world. There's a connection from China to Afghanistan, from Egypt to right here at home in the United States. Corruption is undermining economies, damaging prospects for growth, and challenging our global security. Recently, France's leading organization of national economists invited me to speak at a major economics conference, but they wanted me to talk about graft and bribery because they saw the crucial link between effective and honest government and securing growth in our economies. Ladies and gentlemen, the crimes of corruption are not abstract issues. Every time an official steals from the public purse, somebody suffers. Every time an official is a villain, then there is a victim. Corruption is not confined to any particular culture. The mixture of money and politics is toxic everywhere. And in most countries there is a sense that deals are done constantly with government officials in ways that obviously steal from the public. My own country, the United States, is not immune. When the Supreme Court, in the Citizens United case decision, struck down the ban on corporate expenditure to influence federal elections, 5 justices, and I'm very proud to say that I'm on this panel with Justice Breyer, who voted the right way, but 5 justices radically changed our political system. Free speech is for sale in the United States to smear politicians who seek to serve the public, to distort public perceptions. Over the last couple of years, I've been in the midst of the euro crisis, earning frequent flyer miles on never-ending flights to Brussels and Athens and Paris and London. That crisis started in Greece, where the government falsified the budget accounts and the super-rich evaded taxes. It started in Ireland, where crooks bankrupted the biggest banks in a massive corrupt housing binge. And now the euro crisis is spreading to slow global growth. This crisis will dominate the world's economy in 2013. It will mean reduced European demand for goods from the United States, China, and Japan. That means lower world trade, and that means lower world growth. It will mean challenges to European banks, leading to market volatility, investor caution, and great nervousness. I talk straight. If the news is going to be bad, then I'll say so. Candidly,
The economic outlook is bleak. We face a long journey back to real growth and prosperity. But we can make it. To enable this, we need leadership that breaks free of the Washington gridlock and the special interests. And on this front, let me surprise you and say I'm hopeful. In my new book, Waging War on Corruption, I talk about courageous leaders across the world, from Russia to Peru, who expose government corruption, build civil society, and work to strengthen business integrity.
Corruption in the federal government is the second most important issue to Americans right now, second only to creating good jobs.
That's amazing.
Really? That's according to the latest USA Today Gallup poll results. As you can see there, fighting corruption even trumps cutting the deficit and the war on terrorism. That is astounding.
It is astounding to me, too. And it's not just government corruption in the spotlight. How about the banking industry, the Barclays rate rigging scandal, the Standard Chartered Iran debacle, Walmart in Mexico, for example,
and
allegedly, all taking a toll on investor confidence. Frank Vogl, author of Waging War on Corruption, Inside the Movement Fighting the Abuse of Power, says things are getting better and there's a danger of witch hunts if the pendulum swings too far. Still, though, corruption is an issue. Andrew Stoltman of Stoltman Law Offices disagrees. He says nothing's changed and the banks and Wall Street deserve everything they get. Both join us now to hash out the debate. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, well, who are the villains in your books? Is it the banking industry? Here in the United States, we focus so much on the banking industry. Who are the villains in your books? Is it government or is it banks?
The real villains are politicians and governments who want to abuse power. These are the people who are undermining free markets, hindering democracy. Mine is a book about the whole global situation, mostly about the bribe takers, to a lesser extent the bribe payers. But certainly we've got to understand fighting corruption means getting transparency, accountability, and integrity into business, into government. And if you do that, you have really good capitalism, you have good free markets, and you have democracy.
What impact are you seeing them have, and what steps need to be taken specifically by governments and by individual civil society groups to actually create that change?
First of all, we know what needs to be done to stop money laundering. The Group of 20 has set an agenda against it, but they're not enforcing it. There are many things there concretely that can be done. Second of all, we know how to improve the aid agencies. So much foreign aid simply gets stolen. Give civil society the power to monitor that aid and you will get huge improvements. I could go through a long list. The specifics are known. What we really need now is the action.
One of the things that comes through in your book is a sense of not just looking at corruption as sort of the price to be paid for doing development work or whatever, but rather a real sense of frustration and anger at complacency, of not wanting to accept corruption as inevitable.
We saw in the so-called Arab Spring in January of 2011, first in Tunisia and then in Egypt, how tens of thousands of people went out into the street to face the guns and the brutality of the security forces because they'd reached that point where they felt that the illegitimate governments, they saw them as illegitimate, they saw them as highly corrupt, were day after day abusing their dignity, abusing their self-respect. That constant effort to extort bribes from them for every type of service was demeaning, and they'd had enough. And what we see increasingly over the whole world, we've seen it, mass demonstrations even in Belarus, we've seen tens of thousands of people turn out in Pakistan, in India, in Iran. We've seen people go out, face enormous personal danger to demonstrate against the abuse of their self-respect. And corruption lies at the heart of that. The US political system is swamped with cash, much of it seeking special favors. I believe there's going to be a public backlash. I believe that Americans right across this nation will call ever more loudly and clearly for honesty in government, for accountability, and for integrity. They will demand that politicians do what is right for the nation as a whole, and that will open the door for a brighter economic future. I want to just end with one very simple quote, if I can find it in my papers here. It is from James Baldwin, who wrote after the civil rights movement about how, to quote him, "The people that once walked in darkness are no longer prepared to do so." I think that's very apt for talking about those who were in the Arab Spring, those who were demonstrating across the world, those who were confronting illegitimate governments. Those who are fighting today for freedom, for justice, for transparency, for government accountability, those who are fighting for the dignity of the individual, for self-respect, and against thuggish, official, corrupt governments who coerce and extort. Those people, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you too, are on the right side of history. Thank you very much.